The interceptions were a good sight to see. They kept the Saints close and in the game, but ultimately forcing 2 turnovers still became a -2 in the turnover department because the Saints turned it over 4 times themselves in a demonstrative loss at Philadelphia against the Eagles as the Saints fall 39-17, yielding 519 yards to the opponents. The turnovers I mentioned, Willie Snead had a career day. Drew Brees was sacked 5 times. This was total dominance in every area. The final score was not indicative of the game. Philadelphia truly blew the Saints out. You take away the interceptions in the first half and a meaningless touchdown on the final play of the game. Brian, this could have reached epic proportions. This could have been like a 50-10 game.
Strange game, and it was 10-10 in the third quarter. And, you know, it looked like, Kenny, the way the Eagles were playing to start off the first half, you go, same old Eagles. Saints didn't take advantage of it, and it came back to bite them. Yeah, it wasn't a good sign. And look, both those picks were badly thrown by Bradford, or they may result in touchdowns. So, yeah, you're absolutely right, Kenny. It could have been worse.
Ricky, it is hard to find anything positive in this game when you look at it. You signed a new punter. He kicked a 13-yard punt. You couldn't run the ball again. What else is new? You couldn't stop anything on defense. What else is new? It's hard to find anything positive here.
Well, you know, plus, man, looking at Malcolm Jenkins and Scroll, those guys had their team. They were ready to play against the Saints. And a lot of calls and stuff that Breeze made, Jenkins was already ready for it. And you can see that they have been working on some stuff that Saints still was doing since he was here. So they hadn't changed a lot. You can tell a lot of plays that the Saints were running, they was already geared up for it.
You know, the thing that was disturbing, guys, to me is that from a defensive standpoint, Philadelphia comes in and they're having trouble possessing the ball. They get off the field on 3 and outs all the time. They couldn't convert, and the Saints just played into their hands, and that's not a good sign. Okay, they've got key people back in positions now, Ricky. I'm sorry.
Well,
I mean, they've got Bird back on. Keenan Lewis is getting better. You know, so they've got the people that need to be on the field. Ellerby.
But the thing about all these guys you named, they look bad yesterday.
You're right.
He was just looking at Keenan Lewis. He looked real slow yesterday.
He didn't look totally healthy, did he?
Right. He shouldn't be out there until you can play full speed. And those guys went up to full speed. But one thing you got to give Philadelphia credit, they got some defensive linemen that can beat guys one-on-one. You did not see that yesterday from us. I mean, all day long, the quarterback, he had time to throw the ball. Even though he's not a great quarterback, a mediocre quarterback can beat you when he got all that kind of time.
Perfect storm. Cox against Andrus Peat. Okay, first start. All right, now I mean that. I'm not making any excuses.
Well, you made him make the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's the same with Jackie Smith and with Tampa Bay. These guys are just feasting on Saints offensive linemen. No, it's a problem. It's a real problem right now.
Well, listen, this was not unlike when Terron Armstead started his first game in the NFL at Carolina. They gave up 3 sacks. You can't judge Pete on one game. That said, the jury's out on him. He obviously wasn't ready to play against that competition at this point in his career. That goes without saying, which leads to another topic, obviously, the running game and rushing the football. The Saints can't stop the run, and they can't run the football. That is a lethal combination when you look at the numbers this year. This is what's happened to the Saints. They've been outrushed in every game this year. That is a great indicator. And then look at the Sean Payton regime. Since he took over in 2006, when outrushing the opponent, the Saints are 53-12. You can do the math. That's a pretty significant number. It's pretty significant when you get outrushed in every game. And Ricky, if you can't stop the run and you can't run the ball, you can't win.
No, I mean, and all that comes down to the scheme, first of all, and then it comes down to the offensive line. But I tell you what, when guys know what you're going to do in this league and they know your formation and they know what you're doing, it's hard to beat guys these days.
You know, when you look at this game, it's a little bit misleading. It was a 10-10 game in the third quarter. The Saints are playing, you know, at least even on the scoreboard. There's no, but the running game was obviously having trouble succeeding at that point, and it never got any better. And that's the sign that I think you really look at, is that when the games are close, their running game doesn't move mountains at all.
Well, their offensive line was very poor throughout. You got Max Unger here for a reason,
right?
But You're playing without Evans, you got Kelemete in his place, and you're playing without Armstead, and you've got Pete in his place. So do you really have depth? No. And even if those guys were healthy, Armstead's an upgrade, obviously. At this stage of his career, is Jari Evans that big of an upgrade? There was concern about him coming into this season. And Ricky, time never loses. You knew when it was your time. You had a hard time accepting it because you even tried to come back at one time. It's hard to walk away, but the Saints have 4 core players right now that clearly are on the downside. Drew Brees isn't finished yet, but he's not the same as he was. Zach Strief isn't finished yet, but he's not the same as he was. Jari Evans is getting there, and of course Marcus Colston, unfortunately, is getting closer to the finish line.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, man, when it comes down to the end, just like me, I mean, my last year, I led the team in sacks and stuff, so I know I still was good. I know I can beat one-on-one, I can beat guys. But now, looking at these guys, I mean, like the ball that Colston missed yesterday, you got to catch that ball. If you're trying to win the ball game, that play right there show you that a guy not concentrating, because you don't miss a ball like that, especially 10-year veteran like him. He got to hold his team up. And, you know, you see that yesterday, a lot of times Drew didn't throw the ball on time. He kept the ball way too long. You know, you got an unexperienced tackle over there with you, so you got to work with him too. So you got to get rid of that ball. A lot of times you got to throw it into air, you know, just throw it into space. He held the ball too long. A couple of the plays that he broke down and gave the Farmers up, he should have got rid of the ball.
I don't disagree with that, but again, it's a double-edged sword. The reason he's holding the ball is receivers can't get open. So everybody's criticizing him for dumping the ball off to running backs all the time. Well, the reason he's doing that is because guys can't uncover. And again, it's on Brees for holding it too long, but it's on the receivers for not being able to uncover.
Well, he don't really have the top receiver. I mean, he got
Of
a lot
course,
of number
that's the
2,
problem.
number 3 receivers.
Well, sure.
I mean, you know, it's not like Drew. If you get Drew the receivers to work with and the linemen to work with, you know he's the best in the game. But if you don't give him anything to work with, how can he be sharp? So, I mean, you know, that's the whole thing that comes down to. You got the best quarterback in football, but the guys surrounding him, you know, you done tuck the Grahams away from him, you done tuck all the Scrolls, you done tuck the guys away from him that he was used to, and now you see, I don't care how good he is, if you don't give him nothing to work with, he can't do his craft.
Well, in recent years, Brian Darren Sproles, Jimmy Graham, playmakers, they haven't replaced those guys.
Now, and C.J. Spiller, you see him one game a little bit, you don't see him the other day. We talked about the receivers, Willie Snead, Brandon Cooks. Drew did lay the ball in their hands perfectly with room to run, and they were tracked down. So we've dealt with this really for much of the season. Is, in our opinions, I think I speak for the panel, they don't have a #1 receiver. They've got a bunch of complimentary guys. And Marcus Colston, God bless you. You played with a lot of heart yesterday, son, but that shoulder's bad, and it's time to think about getting out of this game, Marcus.
I mean, you look at what they've brought in. Humanawani comes in, fumbles the ball away. Spiller's made one play. They bring in a punter, he punts it 13 yards. They bring in a safety in Jarris Byrd, he's done nothing. They keep bringing in guys that it's just not happening. I mean, it isn't happening.
Kenny, you know, and they traded Grubbs to Kansas City. They kept Jari Evans, all right? Jari Evans is, as you said, Kenny, is on a declining athlete right now. He's on the backside of his career. And these are the people that they're relying on to block and open holes. And look, Atlanta, the team that comes in here Thursday, I give Thomas Dominic and Dan Quinn tremendous credit. They rebuilt an offensive line on the eve of the regular season.
They did, but they also had playmakers on offense already.
Yes, they do.
Which the Saints don't have.
But you still got to give them time, Kenny, and they've done a good job. And they're going to have a hard time. We'll talk about. They're going to have a hard time getting to Matt Ryan because Matt Ryan's got the quick release. He's got and playmakers, as you say.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you know one thing about the Saints, just like the Cowboy game, they get up for certain teams, and Philadelphia wasn't the team that they got.
But Ricky, you know what? We thought that
they
they should have gotten up for Carolina and Atlanta last year, and they didn't. Okay, and look, both those games were in their house, and they didn't take care of business. I know you like the Saints this week. I haven't seen enough of the Saints to say I like them.
The Saints beat the Eagles in the playoffs in 2013. To see how far they've slipped this past weekend was astonishing. But it was obviously, I think, a clear indicator as to who the football team is, unfortunately, at this stage. I said before the game, whoever wins is relevant, whoever loses is irrelevant. We know who's relevant. We know who is irrelevant at this stage. And Sports NOLA TV is presented by Premier Kia at 2712 Veterans Boulevard. Stop by and see Premier Kia's newly remodeled showroom and the many specials and beautiful cars that Kia has for you. We are glad to partner with your Premier Automotive Group. Glad to be back with you today, courtesy of Premier Kia of Kenner. When we return in just a moment, we'll talk NFL football with Ricky and Brian on Sports NOLA TV here on WHNO TV 20.